How to make a D&D character. Before the video begins, I want to say I will be covering 5e 2014 rules. Mostly everything should be interchangeable between 2014 and 2024 rules. I just want to get that out of the way, and let's begin. What is a character sheet? A character sheet is simply where your character lives. Everything about your character, maybe it's up your backstory, your character's weapons, class, and spells will all be on your character sheet. This is a character sheet, 5e 2014 on the left and 5e 2024 on the right. There are a lot of things that make up a character sheet, such as HP, AC, speed, and your character's stats. We'll go over all of it in this video. Classes. Classes are basically your character's profession, if you get what I mean. For example, you might be a wizard, which is a class, but also your profession. Or clerics, which may be healers as a job. Classes define who your character is and what they do. You might be a barbarian that lives in the wild, and because of that, they are very savage and always go to combat first before talking. There are two main sections of classes, melee classes and spellcasting classes. There's a mix between the two called half-casters, but we'll get to that later. This is one of the biggest choices you have to make when deciding what class to pick. For example, I want to play a barbarian that is a melee class, or I might want to play a wizard, a spellcaster class. Half-casters are characters who have some magical abilities, but have a focus on melee combat as well. Paladins are a good example of this, because they still have magical abilities, but they are mainly a melee class. The biggest thing I recommend when picking your class is to pick the class that you want to roleplay. In 5e 2014 rules, rangers are absolute garbage for dealing damage. That doesn't matter whatsoever. What matters is what you want to roleplay, what you want to do. The class I'm making this video is a cleric. Races. Your race influences a couple things: your speed, height, weight, age range, and stat bonus. Each race has a stat bonus. For example, a human has a +1 to all stats, and a tiefling has a +2 to charisma. This can heavily affect how powerful you are. A +2 is a major stat increase and can give you a good advantage. Despite this, I still recommend picking your race off of the one that you want to roleplay, not the one that is the optimal choice for your build. Plus, it can be very interesting to see, for example, a half-orc wizard, where they would normally be a barbarian. Unexpected combinations like this can introduce a lot of fun into the campaign, and if you want to, I totally recommend you go for it. Of course, it is also perfectly fine to pick the race that's optimal for your class, but I always recommend picking the one that you want to roleplay. For this video, I'm picking a hill dwarf. Stats. Your character's stats are basically what areas and things they're good at. There are 6 main stats: strength, dexterity, constitution, wisdom, intelligence, and charisma. Strength is basically how physically strong your character is. Dexterity is their agility and reflexes. Also fine motor skills like sleight of hand, which is lockpicking in D&D. Constitution is how healthy and tough they are. It is useful to all classes because it influences how much HP you have. Wisdom is intuition and practical knowledge. Intelligence is mental ability and knowledge recall. Charisma is basically how good their social skills and personality is. Depending on the class, different ones are more useful than others. The main stat for a barbarian is strength, while for a wizard is intelligence. But how do you get your character's stats? The way to do it in D&D is get 4d6s or standard dice and roll them. Then you add the 3 highest dice and get rid of the lowest one. You do this 6 times, then assign the scores to your stats depending on your class. Let me show you how. I just rolled 4d6s and I got a 5, 5, 6, and 2. Since 2 is the lowest, I get rid of it and add the 5, 5, and 6 for a score of 16. They're really good. The max you can get is an 18, a 6 on 3 dice. I finished rolling my stats and here they are. I'm making a dwarf cleric, so I'll assign the stats like this. The other parts of a character sheet. There are a bunch of other parts of a character sheet, such as spells, weapons, AC, speed, skills, and subclasses. AC or armor class is how hard you are to hit. Let's say a monster gets a 15 on their attack roll, and you have a 16 in armor class, so they wouldn't hit you. Same for the monster. To hit a monster or for them to hit you, your attack has to match or exceed their armor class. If you're attacking a monster that has an armor class of 17, you would need to get a 17 or higher to hit. Speed is how fast your player can move in combat. The standard speed for every D&D race is 30 feet, and the standard D&D square on a battle map is 5 feet. so on average, per turn you can move 6 squares per turn. Your base speed is determined by your race and conditions. A dwarf has 25 feet compared to a wood elf's 35 feet. Your speed can also be increased by abilities, feats, and actions such as dash, which doubles your speed for a turn. Heavy armor, if you're not proficient, can also decrease your speed, and for example, being a vampire increases your speed. Skills will be found in the skill list, next to your stats, or for 2024 rules, under them. Skills are just what you are proficient in, and depending on the skill, you use different stat bonuses. You might be proficient in a skill. That's when you add your proficiency bonus, which is determined by your level. Subclasses are basically your specialization in your class, such as wizards getting schools of magic to choose from, or warlocks having different types of patrons. Weapons. The weapons section on your character sheet are for writing down what weapons you have. It's just for quick access, so you don't have to look up what they do. Spells. Spells go on your spell sheet, the section with all the spell levels and spell info. Your spell sheet is where you write down the spells that you can cast and info about them, such as range, where you need materials or not, and spell level. My dwarf has plate armor and a shield, so he comes out with an incredibly high 20 as his AC. My dwarf has 25 feet of movement speed, and for subclass, I'm picking Domain of Light. My dwarf cleric is proficient in medicine and religion, and here are some of my dwarf spells: Guidance, Healing Word, Bless, Spiritual Weapon, Silence, and Spirit Guardians. Writing a backstory. I've gone over writing a backstory before, and I recommend you watch it, because it goes much more into depth into the subject, and it's a great watch. Now back to the subject. Writing a backstory may seem like a daunting thing, but it isn't nearly as bad as some new players think. My best recommendations are, first and most importantly, keep it concise. A long backstory takes a long time to write, and the longer it gets, it becomes less useful for you and your dungeon master. I recommend a piece of paper front and back for your backstory. That's a lot of space to write, especially if you have small handwriting. I say keep your backstory concise, because the longer it gets, the more difficult it gets to actually use it to roleplay and for your dungeon master to incorporate. If your backstory is 20 pages, like so many people joke, it will be almost entirely useless. You won't remember half of it. It is nearly impossible for your dungeon master to include in the story. Second, your backstory is for you to roleplay and your dungeon master to incorporate into the story. Write events that show your character's mental process, and leave some plot points in your story open for your dungeon master. Maybe have a character in your backstory that seems to always be there. This is an excellent plot point for your DM to pull on and world build. For your character, you could have them decide between helping a criminal and saving a friend, or not helping a criminal and the friend not making it. If your character really hates criminals, this really tests your character's morals and helps you learn how to roleplay them. My dwarf came from a small village in the kingdom of Helthingar. His town got destroyed by monsters and his family gone. He vowed to serve Telroth as his god and bring the light and death to monsters who wronged him. Here's the final version of my character sheet. I didn't explain everything in this video, but hopefully it helped you. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video, and have a good one.